Absolutely. And I also understand that I might be standing between everyone and their lunch. So that's always a bit of an awkward position to be in. But I will turn my camera off and get my screen shared, and I'll take you through a presentation, and then I'll try to leave lots of room for questions and answers at the end. But feel free to stop me along as we go. But I've got it's probably about 15 minutes, really briefly, to tell you what we've been up to and where we're going from here. So TOHA was founded about 3 years ago with a mission of making regenerative action valuable. And Calm the Farm, TOHA's first project, is charged with finding value for regenerative farmers. So I've been working with the team on this for almost 2 years now, and it's been a windy road with lots of twists and turns. But we always knew that it would be challenging, because if it were easy, someone else would have already done it. So today, I want to tell you the story of our last 2 years so that you understand the whakapapa of our work and how we got to now, because now is getting to be very exciting, and we want you to be a part of it. So almost 3 years ago, our team were introduced to a cohort of dairy farmers. And at the time, they were just beginning to transition their dairy farms to regenerative practices. And we had to answer the big question of what is regenerative farming in a global context, as TOHA plans to make regenerative action valuable globally. So our team did a global scientific literature review, and we found consensus that regen ag includes a set of practices that improves system performance now and in the future, while acknowledging the full set of agricultural outcomes. We found that the practices most closely associated with it, like reduction of inputs, high biodiversity in pastures, holistic grazing, etc., are sound. And the vast majority are already being implemented to some degree across many industries in New Zealand. For the dairy farmers that we've been working with, there have been some common practice changes they've made. They've all reduced their chemical fertilizer use, increased their pasture species, changed their grazing rotations, and reduced their chemical pesticides. They've dropped the inputs over a period of time, and their farm systems are really humming now. And they've all experienced the outcomes of increased pasture resilience through summer dry and exceptional wet. Their animal health costs have gone down, their milk quality has improved. But most importantly, we've noticed they've fallen back in love with their farms and farming. Their relationship with the land has changed. And we start to see them increasing tree plantings, replanting riparian environments, things that don't generate cash flow. These farmers started transitioning as far back as 3 years ago, and the outcomes are becoming more and more obvious. Over that time, many of the farmers have gone through 2 summer droughts, and they've come out of them in better shape than they ever had previously, so it's really making financial sense to them. Farmers like Sam Hogg at Mingarewa taught us that these regenerative practices are replicable as long as you embrace the context of each farm, the land, the people, the finances. We noticed some similarities with all of the farmers that we're working with. They have all had a mindset shift of how they want to be in relationship with their land, and they all have peer and professional support. They have a team. This is Mike Taitako, and he started on this windy path 3 years ago. So when Mike was introduced to this crew of dairy farmers, he knew that they had a great thing going, and that what they were doing was replicable, and that they were creating environmental outcomes that were valuable, not just to them, but to their communities and beyond. So our team began to learn from them, and we designed a process to capture the steps of their transition and convert it into what we call the pledge. In this specific case, it's a dairy pledge. We designed the pledge to bring financial value back to these amazing farmers. So a pledge is like a framework. It lays out what data to collect, how to collect it, and how to provide pieces of evidence that give the data veracity. So like I said, we're learning from this epic group of farmers what they are doing on their farms. And we created the Dairy Pledge, which outlines how to collect the data of the actions that they're doing and some of the outcomes that are occurring. With all of this data sitting in pledges, we needed a mechanism to bring value back to the pledge holder without them giving up ownership, control, or autonomy over their data. So we designed claims as a mechanism of licensing the reuse of small packages of the pledge data to bring cash flow into the pledge. We're launching a marketplace in 2022. This is the place where farmers like our first cohort and other farmers who join farmers like you are able to seek financial value for the environmental outcomes they're achieving on their land. Some outcomes take time, so buyers are able to make a purchase order for a future outcome where the payment is delivered upon receipt of the data package that shows the outcome has been achieved. Recognizing that some land managers may not have the money available to do some of the things required to increase the certainty of achieving the outcomes. For example, you might have to buy trees and spend money on fencing to get a large riparian area up this year to improve waterway health down the road. So we've worked hard to raise money from impact investors to help get those actions started. And this is not philanthropic money or a government grant. These are impact investors who believe that their money can both help to create positive environmental impacts as well as generate modest returns. New Zealand, like the rest of the world, has some key environmental headwinds to overcome. The first cohort of dairy farmers we're working with are achieving outcomes that are aligned with our key environmental priorities in New Zealand. So we're about to onboard our second cohort of farmers into this process. We're beginning with a discovery process. We're asking farmers, what are the impacts that you want to do on your land today and in the future? How are you currently working to improve our waterways, our soil health, our biodiversity, our resilience to a changing climate? What have you been doing for some time? What are you doing now? And what are you planning to do in the future? And what would you do if there were incentives in place? The outcomes of our first cohort of farmers are producing are backed by the verified data that we're collecting with them as part of their pledge. So our team has been working hard to design alternate solutions to governments administering grants and to large corporations buying carbon credits from pine plantations. We really believe that if you change the incentive, we can change the whole game. So today we're launching our new onboarding process in that discovery where farmers map out the good work they've been doing on their land and what they're in the process of doing, and what they would love to do if there was an incentive to help them do so. So the first step in this discovery process is a simple land assessment that you can find on the Calm the Farm website, and I hope you all fill it in. Our team has done a huge stock take of what we're able to say with certainty can be quantified. And this is important because we know that when buyers are looking to purchase the proof of outcomes, they need to have the confidence and trust of that purchase. The claims for sale in the marketplace will come under heavy scrutiny from all sides, and we will have to be able to stand up from it. So if right now you're thinking, what the heck are you talking about, Erin? What is the marketplace? Who would buy something that does not exist yet, may not exist at all? I'm just going to refer us all to Trade Me. We've all bought something on Trade Me. And I could, if I wanted to, buy this mermaid cake right now on Trade Me. And I do so knowing that the cake doesn't exist. It's not sitting in someone's fridge right now. For all I know, the maker doesn't even have any ingredients in their house. But there are mechanisms built into the Trade Me marketplace that generates trust. I can see reviews from customers who have purchased a cake from this account. There's a process to follow if something goes wrong. The seller wants to maintain their reputation and generate more sales, so they're incentivized to create an excellent customer experience and make the sale right to keep their good star rating. And I don't need to tell you about this. Farmers understand playing in the futures market. You lock in prices for products that are not ready for sale yet all the time. You remember when the NZX first launched milk futures back in 2016 and how they really took off in just a few years. So what would an environmental outcomes marketplace look like? And what would it sell? And who would buy them? Our team is mocking up some really early development as to what the website, the marketplace might look like for early test participants. And as you see, it'll be set up for land managers to be able to list on it, as well as for buyers to find products individually and in bulk. It's going to take all of us working together to regenerate the planet on all landscapes. And aligning the incentives supports the mass cooperation that is going to be needed to get this moving. So we're curating a group of buyers with corporates, governments, family offices, and we're really excited for this next stage of Toha and Calm the Farm.
That's awesome, Erin. Great presentation, and what you've been doing there, so comprehensive of an approach to such a complex issue. So yeah, good stuff. Let's open up questions.
For this size limitations of farms can be involved?
Are there size limitations for farms that can be involved? Is this okay for smallholders?
We encourage anybody to come onto the landscape assessment that we have in the Calm the Farm siting. We understand that in the first round of our marketplace, we are going to be capacity limited as our team. And so we will probably be aligning with those farms who have either the claims that buyers are wanting to purchase and or the scale that they're able to produce. So there's going to be a mix in there. But the first step is come on, get that land assessment done, because even if we can't serve you now, we will keep line of sight to make sure we can serve all farm managers or all land managers in the future.
Can you clarify what the buyers are getting?
So what are the buyers getting in this?
Licensed data. So they get a package of data that is licensed for their use. We are seeing, so the data that you collect when you are doing a pledge sits with you, it belongs to you. And there is a process to take that data, analyze it, and license it out in an agreement to the buyer. So for example, a council that wants to understand how their waterways might be improving are not buying the waterways, they are buying the data package, the licensed form of the data package for them to use to see how that outcome is being generated on your farm. So you always own the data never gets sold directly to anyone. It is a licensed reuse of.
What instruments are needed to collect this
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So we have designed our first pledges such that farmers themselves can collect a majority of it. There's a small kit that we had to send out to our first farmers, including water infiltration stuff, We also recognize that we are pressing pause on any more outcome data capture as the claims buyers have very specific needs. So in the license agreement of what they need to see, that is going to flow back and direct how that data needs to be captured. So the stage that's going to be accelerated with the marketplace is that the farmers are going to have, or land managers will have the understanding of exactly what you need to achieve or do or measure to be able to get that purchase, to get that license going. And so that allows people to cooperate together. So if there is a piece of equipment, it can be shared by a community of farmers working together to achieve that outcome, to get that claim. So it is to build cooperation within the system to make sure the things that are needed can be financed on the front end and shared with the group.
What's sort of like the limitation on the pledges farmers could try? You know, say I want to get chicken tractors to increase diversity, and could I try and do some sort of entrepreneurial venture through this, or what's the...
Absolutely. So there's so many different possibilities. What we recognize is that there's a series of different purchasers, and we never want to stop farmers from collecting the information about the changes they're making for their own learning, their community's own learning, and to fill in those science gaps. So Toha Science, which is a entity also under Toha, has done a large assessment of all of the science of regen ag and has noted all of the gaps, the things that are missing. And so scientists are going to be wanting to acquire some of this information via licensing agreements so they understand what successes farmers are having, for example, in chicken tractors, and how that might change outcomes along a piece of land, so that those gaps can be filled. So those pledges can be put up and can be created. So the template of what you're doing and how you're collecting the data, if it's important to you. For some land managers, some land managers are more motivated or need to have an incentive, so are more focused on what are the claims buyers looking to purchase so that they can make their decisions from the cash flow side that way.
Can she give some examples of corporates who might be interested in it and how we kind of want them to use the data if they're buying?
Yeah, so examples of corporates who are interested so far and how we might want them to be doing the buying.
Yeah, so in the very early days, we recognize it will probably be offsetters. It's probably it's corporates right now that we're speaking with who are having to regain social license, who are looking to purchase carbon exterior to pine plantations, who are looking for alternatives to the ETS. who are looking to acquire carbon plus biodiversity or carbon plus other things that more relate to what they're wanting to do as an organization. And they're wanting to buy in bulk. So what we recognize is that there's going to be a scale component, whereas as the buyers come down with many millions of dollars of wanting to acquire, for example, a bulk biodiversity outcome, that we're able to understand and triangulate between what the science knows and what farmers or land managers are willing to collect for data or able to do, and if it fits the goals and values on their farm. So those first buyers are offsetters, manufacturers, some people in the energy production sector, and also corporates who are wanting to do more than their ETS compliance requirements, who are wanting to be able to offset the carbon they are required to do, but with an alternative to the pine plantations.
Yeah, we talked a lot on Friday, our sort of opening day, about this, tidal wave of consciousness that's hitting growers and corporates alike, and that all sounds like it's a part of that shift.
Can it be applied to anyone but farms, like councils or large landholders?
Make it plan.
Yeah, or like contribute or sell their biodiversity.
Yeah. So is it just farmers and landowners that can sell their biodiversity, or could it be like councils or other organizations?
So the way that we have the pledges and the claims structured currently is that any landowner or leaseholder of land who has the management rights to make those changes on the farm would be able to fulfill claims purchases. So we are designing specifically so that any individual or trust held land can come into the system. So we're designing specifically for farmers, for share milkers, for landowners, leasers, Maori trust land that is held in a community or held with multiple owners, so that as that regenerative action is taking place, value can be sent back to those people doing the regeneration.
How does this sit with things such as He Waka Ekanoa and ETS, and are they like competitive? You have one or the other sort of, or do they all work together and you'll be making claims from all of these places? Or
Did you catch that?
Yeah, I did. So that is a whole section of Toha that is working on those alignments and those integrations that is exterior to the work that I do with the front end. So what I can say is we are working to align with all of the existing regulatory bodies to ensure that farmers are able to get the best value for their regenerative actions that they are taking, and that the data demonstrating what good looks like is able to be captured and used to raise the tide for all.
How much does it recognise changes that have been made in the past? Like how far does it go back?
Yeah, so we have mechanisms for capturing the information as to what changes happened in the past. The challenge, and part of this scientific veracity that we must make sure to really hold strong on, is we're recognizing that other marketplaces are really being called into account for carbon that has happened in the past. It is now considered business as usual, and in the voluntary carbon market, there's a big shakeup happening currently with that. And so we are making sure to be able to collect the information, but to frame it appropriately with full transparency as to when it happens, so that buyers have that knowledge. We understand that some buyers are wanting to put in funds to change things that are happening now. And some buyers are wanting to purchase the things that have already happened, the good that has already created these outcomes for all of us. But so for us, it is making sure that we have that transparency within those different sales mechanisms.
How is the price determined for each package of data on the marketplace?
Yeah, it's a marketplace. So very similar to TradeMe, people pay what they're wanting to pay for it. So this is going to be a huge price discovery process for us. Currently, over the next 6 months, we have a series of buyers coming through with our pilot farmers to close off a whole bunch of sales that we have in process where price discovery will be happening. Like I said, with the ETS and He Waka Eke Noa, we are making sure to align so that the majority of the sales can align within that regulatory framework, but it is a marketplace, and so the marketplace will determine the pricing.
So just to elaborate, if I want to plant a creek as a farmer, do I sort of calculate all my costs for that and then submit it with a cost, and then it gets bartered on, or do I just say I want to do this and accept what comes?
Yeah, so the mechanisms that we are putting in place is that we do the land assessment. You would say which area of your creek you'd want to plant off. It would go through a process to determine what the anticipated carbon gain of that would be. That as an outcome would go upon the marketplace. Then you would be able to choose whether you wanted to receive finance before receiving an offer for your outcome, or if you wanted to wait in that position until you received an offer for that outcome. So a buyer, similar to making a purchase order for a thing that doesn't exist yet, could put in a purchase order saying, yes, I actually would like to buy, I have 10 million bucks. I would like to buy, replanted carbon along waterways, riparian environment stuff. And so there's the money against the claim. The price would be negotiated. And once that negotiated price comes back to you, you would then at that point be able to make your assessment as to whether you'd want to take finance on the front end to get that action going, or if you'd be able to manage it within your own cash flow.
What happens if the project is not successful? So somebody's paid for something that ends up not sequestering enough carbon, like what was promised?
Yeah, so that's the purchase of the outcome happens upon delivery of the data demonstrating the outcome. So this is to ensure for the buyers that they are buying the data they're wanting to, recognizing also that some councils and some buyers want to be funding the actions as well. And so they're wanting to purchase the fact that some buyers want to purchase the outcome of your having planted trees, whether or not they ended up sequestering the carbon that was necessary. And so there's a variety of different options in there to make sure that there's still cash flow that is able to go for the actions, even if we're not quite certain that that outcome can be hit yet. But we do anticipate that a majority of the buyers are going to be wanting to be able to acquire the licensed data that shows the outcome. And that is going to be paid upon the outcome being delivered.
Are there analogues of this kind of system that are flourishing in other places around the world?
Not that we are aware of. So there are, we have been chatting with many people globally who have been coming to us because they're requesting a marketplace to make what they are doing on an individual transaction basis much easier. So we are working with organizations in Australia, as well as in North America, who have been attempting some of these things on a smaller scale, but haven't been able to get the fulsomeness of the marketplace that we are looking at, which is why we're starting it from a marketplace perspective. Now, of course, there are a whole bunch of different supply chain programs, like the Rodale Organic Regenerative Program and the Savory's EOV, that does a lot of outcome measurement specific to supply chains. And that is awesome. Like, we have to be highly cooperative in these spaces with people who are doing excellent, organizations that are doing excellent work, because we're not going to regenerate the planet without high cooperation.
How would you go about quantifying or qualifying something that's quite ethereal, the outcome that you're going for? I've got this farm on State Highway 1 and I want to grow a mixture of calendula and echinacea to inspire people and increase the beauty of our country and show that we can forage for our own medicine, and it's sort of the beauty and inspiration is really the goal. Is there a way of valuing that?
Hopefully, eventually, yes. And in the early days, we have to be highly pragmatic about what people want to buy. So we're going to be incredibly pragmatic and transparent with what the buyers have line of sight to and what they're currently looking to acquire at what price, so that anybody who is managing land is able to make the choices with that incentive in mind. But absolutely, in the future, I envision a huge amount of opportunity for communities to purchase the future that they want for their neighborhoods. I know the area that I live in Wellington, all the Miramar Peninsula is pest free. So we have no predators on this peninsula, which means that we have tui and piwaka waka and all of these fantastic animals, geckos running around everywhere. And if that did not already exist, as a community member, that's a future that I would want to put my money against. And there's no mechanism to incentivize right now what is mostly volunteer action and volunteer labor and volunteer time to do so that is making this part of the world so much better for me. And so absolutely, in the future, we anticipate those mechanisms being in place. But to get that marketplace up and running, it's going to be, where's the big bulk buyers coming from? What do they want? So that we can communicate that effectively to land managers to access new forms of value.
So you're brokering between people that are doing the good work on the land and the people that are polluting, maybe, causing the problem. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. So are you sort of brokering between people that are doing the good work and people that are polluting and allowing those two parties to meet up?
We're not acting as brokers right now, but we are creating a marketplace where people will be able to say what they want to buy, and the people who are able to produce this are able to produce their outcomes and put them up for sale. Will the first buyers in this place who show up maybe be really dirty corporates? Very possibly, very possibly. And we recognize that every land manager who does a pledge owns their data and is able to choose what they want to do with it and who they want to sell to. And we also recognize that until we all have huge levers to pull and we make polluting the world much more costly than it currently is, we won't be getting very far very fast. And so one of the big levers that we'll have in the marketplace as these large corporates come in who are needing to regain social license or offset the terrible things they are doing, there is currently no price against that. And as a price comes against that and gets higher and higher and higher, a lever is being pulled to make those actions completely financially unsustainable. And currently no lever is in place to make that happen. So absolutely, there's going to be buyers in the marketplace that you might not want to engage with, and that is absolutely your choice. Also recognizing the more cost, actual hard financial cost we put against these things, the bigger the lever is to pull to create the change.
Is it an annual cost for them?
Is it an annual cost to them?
There's different claims purchases. So we have some claims can be reoccurring, some claims can be one-off. Some licenses are created such that it is paid every year for 5 years. Some licenses are a one-off, so that a corporate could buy it once, and if they like it, buy it again. What I know is that one of the founders of Toha is Natalie Whitaker, who was the founder of Give a Little. And so considering that marketplace that she created and the variety of other marketplaces that she and her team have created post then, their whole development team deeply understands levers marketplaces are able to put into place to create huge amounts of change. So that's not the space that I am working in, but Natalie and her team all understand how to set up a marketplace to make the levers be able to be pulled to create the change that is required.
How's Calm the Farm going to take a transaction fee or monetize the platform?
Yeah, so Calm the Farm is actually just a project of Toha. We kind of don't exist. We're vapor. However, Toha will be charging a fee upon sales. So it is a transaction fee similar to TradeMe when a sale has been completed.
If a big corporate owns this data, right? How do you go about the ethics of this big corporate owning their data and then maybe trying to resell that for monetary gain?
Fantastic question. The corporate never owns your data. You never sell your data. It belongs to your pledge, and you relicense out the use of some analyzed portions of it. So when you collect the data, you're collecting raw data within your pledge. The claim has analyzed bits of it. So in your pledge, and I'll just make it super simple because I have a simple brain, if it says you have 1 and you have 1 here, you'll never sell the 1 and the 1. You'd be selling the 1 + 1 = 2. And so the how we got to the 2 won't be able to be brought back down to your pledge. So the claim itself is the analyzed data that shows the outcomes. For example, how the diversity in your streams is increasing, but not necessarily how the plantings changed, how you took those measurements, all of these different things is the analyzed bit at the end. So there's a process of transforming your data from raw data into analyzed data. That analyzed data is licensed. It is licensed under an agreement. To follow that license agreement, we also anticipate there being a secondary marketplace for that data. And the secondary marketplace still tracks the ownership of that data back to your pledge. So anytime it is reused, the value comes back to the pledge holder, the person who's put the information into the pledge.
I see the benefits of this being wonderful in the fact of incentivizing funding transformational change, but then I have this conflicting unease or fundamental unease about the possibilities of commoditizing or monetizing things which we cannot perhaps put a value on per se, such as your wonderful flowers and inspiration beside the road, or like a tree, where you take all the different values that a tree is actually giving to the biosystem, exactly. All the different benefits this tree is going, and I see it's almost coming back to where we've monetized that tree into a commodity of wood and the things that have to be done there, and then I'm just have this unease about this following a similar vein or not, or how this was
I think
I understand. I was hearing that there's a fundamental unease about monetizing regenerative action for the good of the world. I hear you. I absolutely hear you. I know my fundamental unease is we're running out of time. And my fundamental unease is that all the work that farmers that I see have been doing goes without incentives aligned to it. So I'm originally, you might notice from my accent, originally from Canada, and I work deeply with farmers in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, which is the Canadian prairies, where that land was traditionally tall grass prairie that had bison on it. And the only reason that we have water still remaining in that province is down to those farmers who are managing their herds holistically, that allows the land to recoup water when it does fall, and who have maintained their wetlands. And they don't get a tax break, and they don't get extra money for their product, and they are doing it on their own backs, which means that those farmers who cannot bear the financial cost cannot repatriate their wetland, cannot graze their animals holistically or put up new fencing, cannot, not sell it to the highest bidder who wants to tear it up. And so this provides a mechanism to add an incentive to those farmers wanting, or those land managers wanting to do that work, but currently financially unable to.
Yeah, I see the big value in that. I guess I see the potential. I don't know how it might potentially scale to other things further down the line.
Awesome. Well, Erin, yeah, we do live in a time where it's, a lot of our decision matrix just has to be based on an economic model, and if we can start to make our decisions and have claims to be, financially returned through that, and the Toha model that you've just explained seems like a really exciting opportunity. So thank you for all the work that you do and your organization, and thank you for sharing with us at Future Whenua. It's been really inspiring.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'd love to see you guys go onto the website and try out our land assessment. And I'm just like taking us into the future. Let's imagine 10 years from now, because right now I live in Wellington, where on a weekly basis, raw sewage is dumped into our harbor, which is just an atrocity. And there is no mechanism right now for me as a citizen here, as a constituent of Wellington regional area, to put up a future claim and to say, hey, I want swimmable oceans. I want the dolphins back. I want the fish back. And I'm willing to put my money up when that outcome is achieved. So even when it comes to giving power back to residents of a place to put their money against the future they want for themselves, for their children, for their grandchildren, this is the mechanism that we're hoping is in play.
Thank you for ushering in a beautiful future, Erin.